don't you worry, child. See, heaven's got a plan for you. Don't you worry now. Yeah.
Welcome to Holy Prophets Radio, a business show that applies God's Word to your work, discussing business basics ranging from starting your own company to complex human resources challenges. Don't forget to check out our complete schedule, archive shows, helpful downloads, and much more at leadingforachange.com/radio. Now, get ready to take your company to the next level by applying biblical truths to your work with Holy Prophets Radio, hosted by Bradley Waldrop. Hey, welcome to the program, and we have a guest with us today that we'll be getting into the conversation here shortly. But before we start and get too far into the program, I do want to recognize that this is Memorial Day weekend, and Memorial Day weekend is both a bittersweet kind of thing. I would say that it's great to have the freedom that we have, but there are lots of families out there who have provided a sacrifice that is just an amazing thing for all of us. So those folks who have lost someone, whether they be friends or family, my heart goes out to you, and my eternal thanks goes out to you as well. Without it, we wouldn't have the freedom here in this country that we have. And those of you who have a uniform on or support a family that has a uniform on right now, my heart goes out to you as well. I know that you being in harm's way is what makes this world a better place, and thanks for the service that you provide to us, and it's a debt that we certainly can never repay. With all of that, we're sort of sitting here with thanks, and I haven't had ever a chance to say thanks to Mike, who engineers our show. I'm just so thankful that he's here every week, making us sound good, and dealing with the gremlins that are in the technical machines that are here on a weekly basis. There's always something brand new, and I thank him for his faithfulness in getting us through all of that. Shelley Hughes and Pete Blackshaw for having the trust in me to get this show on the road and put it on the air. You guys are an amazing couple people who are dedicated to getting God's Word out in lots of different ways, and I thank you for that. And then the last two that I'd just like to say thanks to here real quick, I was having a conversation with the co-hosts of the previous show in separate conversations over the last few weeks, and I'd like to say thanks to Jeff for encouraging me to do a podcast for the show. I think that it reaches a brand new audience, and without his encouragement, I don't know if I would have thought of doing that. And then I also wanted to thank Leslie for her encouragement for the YouTube channel that we just launched. So that's brand new. We do have a YouTube channel, and what that has done is highlighted for us last week's integration of multiple cultures in our organization with our interview with Kevin McCracken, who was COO, or who is COO of Social Imprints. It was a really fantastic show, a lot of fun for me, for sure. And I wanted to talk this week about sort of what life looks like when we have to pivot or revisit the basics of our business, and that's one of the reasons why Anne is here. We're going to talk a little bit later about what that really looks like, what a mission and vision statement is, and why we do it. But before we do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the return era in the Bible, and the return era is, as a conversation I was having last week with my wife, it's like God put the Israelites in a 70-year timeout. I don't know if you've ever had a timeout when you're a kid, or if you're a parent right now who has kids. The timeout is really kind of an interesting thing. It allows you to sort of regroup. I know that I've certainly heard this, and I've said it to my own kids. While you're sitting in that chair, in that corner, in the silence, I want you to think about what you did. I want you to think about what you did wrong. And the Israelites had 70 years to try to figure all that out, and I can't even imagine the silent treatment for 70 years, but they certainly had it. And what was happening, is they were coming back to the nation of Israel, and they had to do some rebuilding. And in that rebuilding, the book of Ezra is kind of where I was looking this last week for the show. And in chapters 1 through 6, it's all about rebuilding the temple. And we're going to spend some time talking about rebuilding the temple, because the process of rebuilding the temple is a lot lot like rebuilding our own businesses. So I want to talk about that. And then the second half of Ezra is spiritual rebuilding, and we'll pick that up some other time. But as these folks, as the Israelites are in the midst of trying to understand where life is and what they're doing, the 70 years of silence, or not necessarily silence, but exile, and they're living in another culture, they're trying to have to get themselves sort of back together. And in getting themselves back together, they've got 4 specific things that they do that I think are directly applicable to our business. The first is that they regroup and they find those that remember the cause. As they're coming back in to Israel, they went back to those individuals in culture who really remembered what the temple was all about. Not just what it looked like, but what it stood for. And I think that we have that same challenge in our own businesses. Oftentimes, when we're ready to either pivot or things are not going well, financials in companies are a lagging indicator of whether or not we've done well. And when things start going south, the fundamental problems have already solidified. We're already struggling with cultural problems in the organization. And I think that if one of the things we need to do is we need to sort of focus on regrouping with those individuals who remember why we started what we were doing. Grab those folks, get them together, and participate in this conversation about why did we decide to get this thing going off the ground to begin with? What do we stand for? What is important? What is our soul as far as a business is concerned? So, the Israelites were certainly struggling with that. They found a solution, and the solution was go find the people who were part of it. Go find the individuals who were all there. And in that they had two different groups. They had a group that was going to be asked to build the temple. Those are the ones that remember the temple, that were part of the nation of Israel, who had a social and emotional tie to the temple. And then they had the Levites, and the Levites were the priests, but the Levites were the bosses. Right? They were the ones that were telling the workers what to do, and they were connected with what God's plan was. So they were asked to be the supervisors. And I think that we certainly have a model for that in our own businesses. Grab those individuals who are socially connected, emotionally connected, who are invested in the organization to participate in that strategic plan, and we need to have those leaders who are willing to stick their neck out for what they believe is right. So, as we're going to be talking after the break about how to craft a mission and vision statement, we have to keep that in mind. The team is much bigger than the person who owns the business. It's much bigger than the 1 or 2 people at the top of the organization. So the next is that they were all united during the reconstruction. That means that they were behind one main idea. I think that that's a major struggle for all of us in business. We have, as leaders in organizations, have 2 responsibilities primarily. The first one is to plan. The second one is to communicate. And we don't do either one of them well. We like to work in the business and not do either one. But, what we'll see here is that the Israelites, they were united around this big idea of rebuilding the temple when they came back to Israel. And what was interesting is not only were they united, but their works showed it. And what I mean by that is that they were all asked to give as they had the ability to give. What that means is they were invested. They had a chance to participate not just by sitting and working, but they had a chance to participate with their goods and their services. So we want to be able to find that part of the team who's willing to invest. Is that extra overtime that's not compensated? Is it working on the weekends? Is it working before work or after work to make sure that the plan goes forward? I think it is, and I think that what you do when you have that environment is you have a team that's so solid because they're so much more emotionally invested than folks who just show up at 9, leave at 5, look at it as a paycheck and move on. So that's the second piece. The third is start from the foundation and build it well. So many of us want to put gingerbread on our organizations. We want a brand new service. We want a new direction in life, but we forget to go back and check what we really stand for, why it is we're doing what we're doing. So, it's a good idea to make sure that we stay focused with that. And then the last bit is to celebrate the milestones. If you realize what's happened there as the Israelites came back, every time they accomplished something, they went to the altar and they celebrated. They celebrated their gifts. They celebrated the next milestone, and I think that we don't do that enough in business. We don't get to a point and say, "Hey, we finally got here. Now what?" Well, heck, let's not talk about now what. Let's celebrate. Let's go have a party. So when we get back from this break, we are going to chat about how to take those particular concepts and put handles on them and do them the right way in business with Anne Lazo.
Supporting the local community. WGNW 95.7, The Choice.
95.7 The Choice would like to thank Dry Pros for their generous support. Dry Pros has 27 years of experience in the cleaning, restoration, mold remediation, and waterproofing of homes and businesses just like yours. Whether it's a routine cleaning or restoration from flood damage or mold, the team at Dry Pros has the experience to get it done right the first time. Cleaning all types of floors, windows, fine area rugs, and upholstery, they cover it all. For more information, their number is 828-277-9511. That's 828-277-9511, or visit them on the web at www.drypros.com. That's www.drypros.com.
Where do you turn for Christian concerts and events? Where can you get news from a Christian perspective and encouraging articles written by and about the local Christian community? Turn to the Journey Christian newspaper. Available in print and online. Visit www.journeychristiannews.com or call 828-676-6535. The Journey Christian newspaper. Encouraging Christians on their walk with Christ.
Welcome back to Holy Prophets Radio, and before the break, we were talking about the return era when the Israelites came out of exile in Babylon back into Israel, and talking about rebuilding the temple and participating in this process of reconstruction. And I thought that it'd be a really great idea for us to have Anne Lazo here and talking a little bit about that reconstruction process. Anne is just a wonderful lady who participates here in the professional community inside Asheville. She owns a consulting business called Eagle Soars. She participates in the marketing aspects, in the training aspects, and strategic planning of different businesses, and we've had a chance to work together a little bit. Also, my thanks and hats off to the logo that was designed for the show and the artwork that was put together for our podcast. That is all Anne's work, and I appreciate her dedication in doing that and having a vision for where we are and what we're doing with our business here at the radio show. And I just wanted Anne to get a chance to talk to all of us a little bit about who she is, what she does first, and then we're going to go into the specifics about the mission and vision, core values, and what business owners need to know so they can do it right.
Okay, well, thank you for having me on the show this morning. It's very exciting. Just a little bit about myself. 11 years ago, I was out in corporate America working as a director of sales and marketing for an environmental consulting and remediation firm. Saw some things changing, decided at that time I wanted to go out and live a lifelong dream of owning my own business. So I got into marketing, and I focused really on the area that I thought there was a gap, and that was with the owners of small businesses and medium-sized businesses, because they couldn't really afford a public relations firm, and they didn't have somebody doing their marketing for them, and it was an area that was underserved. So I decided to go into that area to really help those businesses do business better, because I believe everybody has a desire to do business very well, and that was really what I wanted to focus the business on. And as the years progressed, so did our service offerings, and we started getting into training and development, knowing that a business isn't just about the marketing materials that you send out there. It's really about your team behind those marketing materials and making that a stronger team as well.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you and I somewhat share some history in working for professional services businesses. And when we work for these large corporations, there is this massive staff that exists to advance the message. And I know that the small business, family business business owner, the sole entrepreneur can't figure out how to split their time enough. So I'm so glad that you're providing services to them, because having that kind of vision and understanding what it takes to put that kind of quality message out there is super important. And I just encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, because it makes our own small business environment better. So, as we were chatting about this show to begin with, we were talking about this process of either pivoting and moving in a new direction, or realizing that things are not going the way we want it to go. And oftentimes it comes right back to the fundamentals and the basics of what a mission, vision, and core value statements are all about. So, if you could, for the listening audience, just sort of describe what your view is of the mission, vision, the mission statement and a vision statement, just so that we can put it into context.
I think both of them are really combined together, and they're like the lighthouse of your business, or the compass that keeps pointing north. Your vision statement is really the bigger picture. What do you want your legacy to be? It's not so much down to the minute things, whereas the mission is how people know what you do. It's how your employees know what they're doing when they come into work every day, and it's how your customers know what you're selling. So that's really the activities of your business, whereas the vision is what you want that business to accomplish in a larger level.
Right. Absolutely. That's great. I like the analogy of the lighthouse. That's a really great analogy. And when I work with small groups, whether they be organizations, mission, whether they be businesses or churches or other things, when we talk about kind of going and launching a group to go do something, that short set of instructions in the very beginning, that's sort of the mission statement. This is why we're here, right? And businesses have a much longer list of things that they want to do, but to keep it concise is probably a very good thing, so everybody can remember what they're doing, right? And the vision, what I think you've articulated very clear. What direction are we going? Where do we really want to be? Do you find that vision changes depending on how big the organization is or how mature they are?
I think as a company is growing, that vision will change. You're out there, you're doing a business, you're finding out things, you're learning things yourself, you're experiencing things. And if you're a Christian in the business world, you're also praying and you're seeing the impact that you can have out there in the community. So I think that as a business grows over time, that vision statement will change, hopefully more global for the better of, affect more positive change out there.
I think that it's also interesting that as those companies mature, not only does that vision statement get to be longer and broader, oftentimes, the time frame and what they want to accomplish does get bigger, but the focus gets more and more narrow, because the company has figured out a little bit about what their niche is and why they want to do what they're doing, and they've decided that the shotgun approach that they were using when they first started their business doesn't work anymore, and they want to focus on a specific area of the service that they do or the product that they provide, and do it so well no one else can compete. Right? Do you ever run into those kinds of companies who are they're still trying to figure it out, and then you have to coach them to get to be smaller on that vision?
I think all the time, because one of the things I know that business owners want to do is constantly be better at what they're doing. You don't go into business saying, hey, I just want to be average today and just get the work done. I think that they all want to go out there and be better and make a real impact. So I don't think it's a process that ever really you stop at.
Yeah, I would agree.
You're consistently growing.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. And we talked a little bit about core values, and when we were kind of coming out of the break, we talked about core values, but we really haven't articulated what those core values. What is it? What is a core value? Why do we need them?
To me, I think the core values are how you go about accomplishing your mission, how you treat other people, the impression when someone sees your company. What is that impression that you want your company to give to them? We talk about trusted leaders. You want people to trust your company. Do you want your company to be a fun place for people to work in? It's those breaking that mission down into how you want to do business.
Yeah, I think that's great. And, sometimes we can even use a set of core values as kind of a litmus test for how we would make a decision. And one of the things that I find businesses struggle with the carrot, the apple, whatever it is that's attracting them is so attractive that they forget their core values, and they're willing to sort of park them on the side, chase after a new dream along the way, and then they realize when they get there that they made a mistake because they sacrificed what they stood for in order to get more money or expand geographically or provide a new service. And I think that that's kind of what we're talking about here is when we get away from, when we diverge away from our core values, we've got to have somebody in the organization or a team around us to say, what are we really doing here?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about creating this brand new mission and vision statement or resetting it, so to speak, what does that process look like?
Well, to me, I think it's important. There's certain areas of business where I think it's important that you get outside professional help to kind of guide you through that process. And this is one of those areas that I think is important to work with a consultant who is experienced in this area. They can ask you the tough questions. They can kind of get that emotional. I mean, every business owner has an emotional side to things. You've invested time in certain things that may not be working. But you don't want to give it up because you've invested all that emotion. So they can kind of help you walk through that thing. They can also, I think it's important to get your team involved in it because, as you mentioned, when everyone feels that they're part of that success and part of developing that mission and vision statement, they've invested something in it. They're going to invest their time into making that succeed. So I think this professional can kind of guide the whole process for you. Help you draw out what it needs to be and help the team come together and get that unity within the team.
That's great. And when you're talking about enlisting the help of a consultant, a lot of people out there, I think, are concerned that when you hire a consultant, you're spending more money than you will get value from, and they don't know how to pick one. Right? I mean, there might be 15 of them that they know or have heard of. What advice can you give the business owner who's trying to reset their direction? What advice can you give them as to how to pick somebody to help them out?
I think it's important to come back to your core values.
There you go.
To choose a consulting firm that has the same core values that you have. Even if your core values have changed, you had some starting out and you know what those should be. So I think it's important to work with somebody who feels the same way about business that you do.
I think you're right, and I think one of the easiest ways to do that is to start contacting consultants and having just a one-on-one sit-down chat with them. Right? Most consultants will provide free consultation up front, and they'll talk about what they want to understand more about the business, so they know if it's a fit for them as well. But what is really kind of a two-way street. It's a relationship that you're starting to build, and you've got to kind of sit down with them, and you've got to ask each other the sort of tough questions going in. What do you really stand for? And how? And as if you're a business owner, oftentimes you have to think. I suspect. You need to think about how that consultant is going to hold you and your team accountable,
exactly.
and whether or not they have the right kind of character that's going to come across with grace and mercy in that accountability process, or if it's just going to be abrupt and difficult, because there are personalities that just don't fit sometimes. So that's really great. If you were to give sort of one bit of advice in this entire process, mission, vision, values, what one piece would you like business owners to know before they were to shut off the radio today?
That's a tough question.
You want me to come back to it?
Yeah, I think because
we'll come
because
back
there's so many good things that we're talking about that I think it's important to remember that the mission, the vision, and the core values are, again, your lighthouse, that you need to, as you're going through this process, always come back to that. Periodically evaluate what you're doing, coming back and saying, are we still on target for this mission vision? Do we need to alter it in some way, or have we totally strayed? And just come back to that and make sure that it's written down and that everyone knows that mission vision and those core values.
Well, that's good, and I think that's a really good response. And with that response, how often would you recommend a business sort of revisit, or maybe it's part of a strategic planning session or something else? Do you have a back of the napkin idea of what it would take to do that?
Well, I think with any kind of business, it's important to always be, looking at your return on investments and things. I think maybe it's a quarterly thing. It's going to be, I think, individual to the business as they're going through things. Maybe it's something that your team helps you decide when you're going to come back and look at it. Or maybe it's just as a matter of you're going through things and something doesn't feel right. Okay, let's go back and take a look at that mission and vision statement.
So I think what I heard you say was it's not a weekly thing. Right, it's not so common that you have to carve out time every week to work on, and I also think what I heard you say is you need to have a team around you that you trust enough to keep you in check, and to say, hey, wait, I think we're getting off track, and that's difficult for business owners because, well, heck, they wouldn't be the business owner if they didn't think that their opinion was right all the time, right? So that's difficult, and we're all guilty of that, sort of having these blinders on. So one of the things that I think that most small businesses don't understand as we're talking about the timing along the way is that these kinds of meetings, there really are kind of two different types of meetings that occur in businesses, and they are tactical meetings, how to get the job done, right? That's getting the team together and working on the process of procedure and things like that. And the other are strategy meetings, and those strategy meetings have to do with our core values and the direction we're going. Not just the direction that we thought we were going, but the direction we need to go. Maybe we need to make minor adjustments along the way, not sacrificing the core values, but enhancing our business one direction or the other. And maybe oftentimes for us the struggle is what not to do. Not to add more things to the list, to the to-do list, but stop doing this because it's not being effective, right? So strategic planning periodically, and for each business it could be different, right? Once a quarter, once every other year, once a year, who knows? But they are periodic, and I think that's one of the reasons why bringing a consultant in actually helps. Because you can help identify what that periodic nature is, and I think that most business owners don't understand that consultants aren't there every day, 40 hours a week.
Right.
They come in, they participate in whatever event you have, document it, move you forward, and then they sort of vanish like a shadow in the night, and then you bring them back when you need to.
Right.
So you really don't incur a long-term cost, and it's something that you can negotiate up front, right? Well, I really appreciate Anne being here. It's been so helpful to talk to someone about the mission and vision process, someone who does strategic planning and participates on the marketing end and getting that vision or that message out consistently. If others need to figure out how to get a hold of you, what's a good way for them to do that?
They can go visit my website. That's at www.eaglesoars, and that's SOARS.com. Or they can call me toll free at 888-410-3070.
How about an email address?
Email is askusk@eaglesoars.com.
Nice. That sounds great. Do you have a Facebook page?
Have a Facebook page at Eagle Soars Consulting.
See, look at that. You're like multimedia, social media, and everything
You've
else.
got to these days.
And yeah, absolutely. We're just kind of running up here against the clock. But what I wanted to do is just sort of let you know that this big picture of what the Israelites did when they came back to Israel is really in very striking parallel to what we have to do as we're rebuilding our business. We have to start from the foundation. We have to regroup with those people who really understand what the cause is. We need to be united during that reconstruction process, and we need to celebrate those milestones. We really need to be able to look back on it and say that we did something right, and give each other a high five and celebrate along the way. Next week we are going to be talking about the silence era, that period between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and the fact that sort of nothing was going on. I think us as business owners oftentimes feel like we're right in the middle of a silence era. So we're going to talk about that and how each one of our businesses still need a savior. So join us next week, and thanks for joining us today.
Don't you worry, child.